It's the same cycle every single day. Wake up, check the tabs, and realize that 2 indie games you hadn't heard of last month are now the definitive front lines of a cultural civil war. I'm talking about Path and Ex Voto. And just so we're clear, I'm the one talking, a real, breathing human with a caffeine dependency and a mortgage, not a chatbot hallucinating a script. If I sound glitchy, it's the lack of sleep, not a server error. The Path controversy erupted when developers rejected LGBTQ representation as a modern agenda, sparking accusations of homophobia. In response, Ex Voto has been championed for its lesbian romance. This drama has turned both titles into symbols of a larger ideological clash over gaming inclusivity. If you've been on the internet for more than 5 minutes, you know the drill. The algorithm doesn't want nuance. It doesn't want wait and see. It wants you to pick a side, get angry, and click that notification bell so you can be the first to drop a spicy take in the comments. This is the bread and butter of modern commentary, fast, loud, and designed to be consumed in the 10 minutes you have before getting back to work. Here's the thing though. Under the screaming and the quote tweets, this whole situation is not really about design or even about politics. It's about marketing. It's 2 small teams fighting for oxygen in a store page jungle where 1,000 games launch every week, and the only way to get noticed is to cause a scene. You're not watching a debate. You're watching a sales funnel. Let's talk about Path. This developer knew exactly what they were doing. They could have just said, hey, we're a small team, we're focusing on tight parry windows and one-on-one combat, so we don't have the budget for a branching romance system. Simple, technical, honest. But honesty doesn't get you 50,000 retweets. Instead, they dropped the phrase no modern agendas. Boom, instant engagement. They didn't have to show a second of new gameplay to double their follower count. It was a dog whistle that turned into a foghorn. For one side of the internet, it was a heroic stance against the message. For the other, it was a massive red flag. Either way, the Path devs just got a wave of free marketing because they played the anti-woke card. And the funniest part, how ordinary the underlying issue is. Romance systems are expensive. Branching dialogue is expensive. Animations are expensive. Voice work is expensive. Even if you don't do full cutscenes, every extra option multiplies writing, testing, bug fixing, and edge cases. Indie dev is triage. You pick the features you can finish, and you cut the ones that could sink the schedule. Path took that normal reality and dressed it up like a crusade. It's brilliant, it's cynical, and it's perfectly tuned for the current era, where everything has to be a battle flag. A missing feature became a moral stance. A budget cut became a manifesto. The fun line did not explain combat depth, enemy variety, or progression. It explained tribe. Then you have Ex Voto. If Path is the anti-woke champion, Ex Voto is the progressive challenger. They didn't just lean into identity, they made it the entire brand. A non-binary lesbian knight as the lead. Cool, fine, narrative choice. That alone isn't a scandal. Medieval fiction has always reimagined the past. The genre is built on myth and remix. But the marketing team didn't stop there. They started sniping back at Path. They made the feud the product. They took the modern agenda phrase and wore it like a patch on a uniform, daring people to swing. They turned sarcasm into a tagline, and then they kept feeding the machine by replying, quote tweeting, and escalating. Suddenly, you're not buying a game because you like the art style or the story, you're buying it to support the team or own the other side. We've reached a point where your Steam library is basically a political compass, and people act like uninstalling a game is a personal confession. The problem is, the games aren't even in the same genre. Path is crunchy, heavy armor action. The pitch is timing, frame-tight parries, spacing, stamina management, and the satisfaction of learning a boss pattern. It wants to be the kind of game where your thumb knows the rhythm before your brain finishes the thought. Ex Voto is slow, narrative-heavy, exploration and mood. It leans toward dialogue choices and the feeling of moving through a story, rather than mastering a combat loop. Comparing them is like comparing a steakhouse to a poetry reading, just because they share a street. But the commentary machine doesn't care about genre, it cares about conflict. Conflict is a thumbnail, conflict is a clip, conflict is a reason to refresh the feed. And we have to talk about the jiggle physics. Path confirmed it, the internet exploded. Again, one side called it unprofessional and coarsening the medium. The other side called it based and a victory for fanservice. The same tired lines, the same recycled outrage, the same "this is why gaming is doomed" posts, from people who were never going to play it anyway. Let's be real, it's a toggle, it's a technical gimmick. It's the kind of optional setting half the player base will never notice. But in the pre-release cycle, it's pure gold. It's rage bait that converts into wish lists. The devs didn't need a polished trailer, they needed a spark. they got one. Meanwhile, over at Ex Voto, people are losing their minds over the protagonist's build and the combat presentation. You've seen the clips, a slight character knocking back a giant in full plate armor, enemies ragdolling like they're made of paper. The realism crowd is having a field day. They say the animations lack weight. They say the physics look like they were tuned for a different model. They say it breaks immersion. Here's the reality check. Since when did we care about weight in a medium where plumbers jump on turtles? We only care because it's been framed as a political win or loss. In another timeline, this would be a normal art critique. Hey, the combat doesn't sell impact. That would be it. Instead, people treat the character model like evidence in a trial. This is where the double standard becomes impossible to ignore. Critics condemn Knight's Path for restricting romance options to heterosexual paths, citing lack of choice. Then those same critics defend Ex Voto, which also restricts romance options, because it fits the protagonist's identity and narrative. On the other side, fans demand historical accuracy from Ex Voto, while shrugging off magical healing potions or boss monsters in Knight's Path. If the principle is broad player choice, then both games can be criticized for limitations. If the principle is narrative focus, then both games can be defended for staying in lane. What you can't do, at least if you want to be honest, is switch principles depending on who you're rooting for. But honesty is the first casualty in algorithm war. People don't argue to discover the truth. They argue to score points. The goal is not understanding. The goal is applause from the crowd that already agrees. And this is where the audience actually loses. Look at the big gaming sites. When these games launch, are we going to get a breakdown of input latency or GPU optimization? Are we going to get detailed analysis of hitboxes, frame pacing, controller dead zones, or performance on mid-range hardware? Probably not. We're going to get essays about cultural significance. We're going to get moral verdicts. We're going to get reviews that spend more time on social media posts than on the game loop. That doesn't help someone deciding whether to spend $40 and a weekend. We saw this pattern already. Space Marine 2 and Stellar Blade were treated like political props before they were treated like products. Pundits predicted failure. Then the game sold because people like polished combat, clear direction, and visuals that hit their target audience. Sales did not care about the loudest posts. Sales cared about delivery. When reviews focus on the moral narrative instead of technical performance, you get two outcomes, and both are bad. You buy a game that runs like garbage because the reviewer liked the message. You skip a great game because the reviewer disliked a dev's tweet from years ago. And because it works, more devs will copy it. The next wave of indie launches will ship with pre-packaged controversy. They'll put bait in the trailer. They'll write a slogan designed to break containment. They'll play both sides, because any attention beats none. Now zoom out. The reason this matters is not because these two games are the center of the universe. It matters because the tactic is spreading. As we move toward the Fable remake and other big RPGs, you can already see the outline of the next fights. People are pixel-peeping character models. They're arguing about modern audiences. They're writing long threads about what the game should be, based on politics, not design. But the truth is boring and practical. Fable will live or die on systems. Quest structure. Humor that lands. World reactivity, combat feel. The sense that choices matter. No amount of agenda talk can save a game that isn't fun. No amount of backlash can kill a game that nails the loop. If you want to escape the brain rot, you have to stop treating your hobby like a war. Ask the product questions. Is the combat tight? Does the story land? Is the price fair for the hours of entertainment? Does it run well on your machine? Does it respect your time? If the answer is yes, who cares what the dev said on a Discord server? If you like the feel of a heavy parry and a Roman aesthetic, try Knight's Path when it drops and wait for performance reports. If you want a slow, emotional medieval drama, watch Ex Voto's pacing and see if the narrative hits. You are allowed to play both. You are allowed to play neither. And if you actually care about improving the medium, be consistent. If Ex Voto has frame drops, call it out. If Knight's Path has shallow combat and recycled enemies, call it out. Don't give a pass because the devs agree with you. Don't attack because the devs disagree with you. The only sustainable feedback is about quality. Because here's the quiet truth behind the noise. Identity can be used as a shield. Anti-identity can be used as a shield. Both are marketing armor. Both can be used to dodge fair criticism, and when criticism becomes taboo, games get worse. At the end of the day, most people are looking for an escape from the grind. They want games that work, stories that move them, and mechanics that challenge them. The culture war is a marketing layer applied by people who want your clicks, and it works because we keep falling for it. So lower the temperature. Treat a game like a game. Turn off the feed for a minute. Look at raw gameplay. Wait for performance breakdowns. Ask if it's fun. Everything else is just noise for the algorithm. One more point before you bounce, because this is where people get trapped. The loudest voices online often have the least skin in the game. They don't buy the titles they review in threads. They don't finish them. They don't patch them. They don't sit with the mechanics long enough to learn what works and what fails. They drop a verdict, harvest likes, and move on to the next fire. That's how you end up with a community that can recite slogans, but can't describe how a stamina bar is tuned. If you want a simple filter for this stuff, look for receipts that matter. Show me footage. Show me frame pacing. Show me how the camera behaves in tight corridors. Show me whether enemies track through dodges. Show me if the UI is readable. Those details tell you more about a game than any virtue signal, positive or negative. And for devs watching this, the lesson is blunt. Outrage can get you eyes, but it can also poison your launch. If you attract an audience that only came to fight, they will turn on you the second the product is merely average. If your parry timing feels mushy, the no agendas crowd will call you a fraud. If your story pacing drags, the modern agenda crowd will accuse critics of bias. In both cases, the discourse becomes a smokescreen and the actual craft gets buried. There's also a long tail problem. Screenshots live forever. Old tweets get recycled. Years later, a patch note will drop, and someone will drag a dev quote back into the timeline like it happened yesterday. That's not accountability. That's a permanent hostage situation, where marketing lines become shackles. A studio should want to be known for shipping good updates, not for winning a week-long hashtag war. So here's the practical move for players. Keep a small checklist. If a game is indie, expect rough edges, and check whether the studio communicates clearly. If a game is action-heavy, look for consistent input response and stable performance. If a game is narrative first, look for strong writing and pacing, not just a premise. Then decide. No crusade required. Because the fastest way to kill this trend is to starve it. Don't reward bait with attention. Don't treat your wishlist like a ballot. Save your energy for the games that earn it. When devs see that systems sell better than slogans, they'll pivot. Until then, you're going to keep seeing agenda and anti-agenda as a coat of paint on the same old hustle. Alright, that's the briefing. Back to your lunch.